welcome to Laughing Monkey Music Show. Taylor, I'm guitarist, band leader, extravagant. Paul Crook. Paul's been in played with many musicians. He's done stuff with Brian May, like almost every legend you could think of. Obviously, we're going to talk about Meatloaf and all the years you spent with him, and because you're a fantastic guitar player. I want to talk about you too and your playing today. I don't want to get sidetracked, also, because the reason why you're with Meatloaf is because you're a fantastic player. You played with Anthrax, and all through the years, I've loved your playing. So, but you
Oh, thank
also are continuing on with the legacy of Meatloaf, which to me is fantastic as a fan my whole life. Um, but what I want to start on is in your career, as you've changed around, you've moved around with a lot of different musicians. What it seems like you've climbed, you've always been located in the right spot with the right people. Do you feel like musically you've been prepared for each situation? Because it feels like you've always come out of the box, like you do the rock thing for Brian, like you've always been ready, musically prepared. Do you think you've always been prepared for each situation coming up, like done your homework first, or do you feel like you've kind of fallen into some of these situations?
That's a great question, Sean. And thank you for having me. It's funny. I talk about this thing a lot, actually, with when I get questions from fans who are up and coming, guitar
Mm.
players who I meet, and I I firmly believe that the universe puts things in your path, and it's all on vibration. I don't want to get too heavy here in a spiritual sense, but I believe that your vibration puts you in position. And by vibration, I mean it all starts here. All right. So you imagine yourself in certain situations, and when you imagine yourself, you also feel it. You have to put emotion behind it for the universe to answer. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, a good example of this is working. I work with Sebastian Bach, who's he's crazy, you know,
Yes.
and he's crazy, and I mean that in a loving way.
Oh, I know you. I know you do.
You know, yeah, I mean, to be that good, you have to be crazy, and his craziness totally prepared me for Meatloaf, because Meatloaf was Sebastian on steroids. Like Meatloaf. When you think about like a rock star, and I think about rock
Yeah.
star, Meatloaf is a rock star. When I'm saying rock star, I'm talking about like Freddie Mercury, David Bowie. I'm talking
Right.
about that kind of stuff. Like Meatloaf. I saw Meatloaf. Whether a listener here agrees with me or not, I don't care. This is just how I looked at my boss. When I would look at him on stage when performing, looking at him, I saw that beast from 1977 holding that handkerchief and that white puffy shirt and that long hair. I saw that guy every night on stage. He was a rock star. Preparing, going back to Anthrax, thank you for mentioning that. I'm really proud of my time with Anthrax. I was a roadie for them first. So that in itself, the universe set it up right, because when I stepped into position to play with them, it felt very natural for me. Just because I spent the last few years prior to that just jamming with them constantly. On the road,
Right.
they always had a jam room on tour, which was great. We always had mini Marshalls, and Charlie had a small kit, and we would set it up. Mike Tempesta and I, we were roadies. This is going back to 1989, right?
Wow.
And and we would jam like all the time. Every day it was like the highlight of the day for us. The band would show up about 4 o'clock, and we'd go in there and we jam Kiss songs. We jam crazy stuff until showtime.
Yeah.
So when it came time to actually sit in seriously, again, it felt very natural for me. I wasn't remotely nervous about it, and I believe the universe did that as well. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and the fans are jumping around. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Paul. I actually encourage you to go and check out other podcasts. I mean, I support all the podcasts. But your history, you've gone from your tech for Lewis or Cole. You've done fantastic things. You performed Brian May solos in front of Brian May. Oh my God, I'm a huge
Yeah,
Brian May fan. You can see the
yeah.
box behind me. Love Queen. I mean, so you've done some really great things.
Can
Where
I,
you really,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Sean.
yeah,
So, Sean, can I interject on that for 1 second? I want to grab that thought process.
yeah.
There's something interesting there. There's something really good here I want to say because I'll forget. You said I played Brian May solos in front of Brian May. Yeah. He actually trained me. We did one-on-one training in Las Vegas for about, I'm not exaggerating, for about, wow, 8 to 10 weeks, where he showed me every nuance, every little move. I actually have a sixpence here.
uh,
I keep it by
yeah,
me always because I use it when I record. This is actually a Brian May played sixpence.
yeah.
I think I stole it from him in Nashville. But yeah, keep it right here. Uh, but he showed me every little thing. And what was amazing about Brian, what is amazing about Brian, is that we even talked about this when I saw him in Philadelphia last month. Uh, Whenever he was around, I was never nervous around him. He would come down to the theater. He'd just pop in, to check things out as we were moving in the production. And whenever he was in the theater, I was always calm playing in front of him. He had a very relaxing
Mhm.
vibe, and I always felt strong with him. It's incredible. I don't know why that happened because I would imagine you'd think I'd be terrified, but I wasn't.
Well, I think there's two
Weird.
schools of thought. No, well, it makes sense. I mean, if you're a confident
Mm.
player, you're confident you are. I think what I was thinking more would be is when I feel about Brian and when I've talked to other musicians and stuff, there's a certain comfortable level you get from certain people where you feel like you've done it forever and you don't feel nervous. You're like, oh my God, I've listened to you forever and I talk to you and it's like it's totally different. But playing his solos in front of him and not knowing the nuances, because I've watched guitarists go online and go like, yeah, it's very close, not exactly it. So playing somebody's stuff, it's almost like cooking somebody's food. I know this is you're good at this. I'm going to cook this pie for you. So it's not about him beating you up. It's about like saying, here's what I think you sound like to you, to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Of course, it's Brian May. So to
Yeah.
that point, I'm like, the nuances, and he's watching you. I mean, he's really just kind of, so to get that stamp of approval, that's pretty awesome, especially as a guitar player to be
Yeah,
like growing
it
up,
is.
you
Yeah.
know. So
Mind
you've
blowing.
done fantastic things. You really earned yourself to where you are. And 20 plus years with Meatloaf, you know, or you obviously meat. Is it how long did it take you to get used to calling him just meat? Hearing calling somebody just the word meat, I think it would take me forever. Like I've listened to him my entire life. Like one of my first records I got from my mom was Bad Out of Hell. She had it in her collection. I remember I was really young. I pulled it out and I was like, oh, this is the best album cover ever. What is this? And she's like, it's Evil, which just told me the best album ever for me right there. You put it on, and at the time, to me, it was like 1950s like sensibility, rockabilly to it, the great artwork. Then it had like the 70s sound to it, but also had some really great guitars that were like up and coming, like rock metal. So the album feels like it had everything and a production.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that had everything at the time, and I think it laid out a foundation. So for you to come in there and then like my boys after all these years, when people say refer to them as just meat, it still throws me off. I'm like, I don't know how long it would take me to get used to calling somebody meat without feeling comfortable with it.
Yeah. 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 I didn't call him meat. It was always boss. It was like, hey boss. He'd
I
call
would
me on
do
the phone.
that,
I
I
go,
think.
hey boss. That's how I answered. But I didn't have a problem calling him meat. It wasn't an issue. I just called him boss. John Michelli, our drummer, Randy Flowers, our guitar player, they called him meat. The only other person that calls him boss would be our production manager, Joe Libretti.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that about Bad of the Hell. I was the same kind of thing for me. It was about the album cover for me first. I remember
Oh my
holding it, going,
God.
"Wow, this is really cool." And it's funny that you brought up some music production. Yeah, there's definitely some Phil Spector in there, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
The
whole Jersey sound too. There's a Jersey sound there too. The whole Bruce
mhm.
Springsteen thing in there.
The whole
It's
boardwalk thing going on there. Yeah.
yeah. Meet love Bruce Springsteen.
I
Really
did. Yeah.
respected him. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. When I heard that album, I heard so much. Actually, as I say this out loud, I'm a big fan of like literally all types of music, as I tied on for my guests. And it's probably one of the first albums I had that had so much on it. Like obviously over the years, that's probably the first album I had that felt like it had, looking back, had that many different types of genres of music on it. I mean, it had a lot on it, you know, for sounds and stuff. And then from there it
Yeah,
went on.
amazing.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think
yeah,
clearly between some of the albums, I think the public had them labeled as one thing and they wanted another thing, and they wouldn't just let him keep being a musician. I think so. Sometimes, you know, he didn't get the accolades. It took him a while. You know, Bad Eye 2 came out. I was cheering for him. I was so happy when that came out.
I don't. He never felt that he got the accolades. You know,
Oh, I don't think he did.
he always felt he always felt a bit abused. You know, by the system and by the business. Uh, yeah, I got to be careful when I say things like that because he's not here to
Defend him. Right.
clarify it. I'm always really careful what I say. It's just me observing things. Like, please let me say that. From my observation, Meat was never really satisfied with how he was viewed in the rock community.
Oh, I agree. I think
You
I
know,
think because that was that album. What that album did was
if I could just say it.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and
cool.
then the age he was at, and then like I said, when Bad Eye 2 came out, but like the albums in between, he did a lot of really good music. But I think like a lot of artists, it's like the industry wants one thing, and he had some other good stuff in between that really just didn't get the. It's like that's not the same thing. We want one thing from you. Like, and he was an artist, you know, a very passionate artist, and it had to be like Bad Eye
Yeah.
2, which is a fantastic
Well, you know
album.
what?
But
Uh,
he just ignored everything between that. Does what I'm saying. To me, it was kind of a bummer as a fan.
yeah. Yeah. There's an important point to that too. It, you know, be, on top of the cool music that was released, this guy was out there performing. He was
Yeah,
touring. He was working 6, 7 days a week, and he was crushing it on stage. Like the guy was an incredible performer. We know this, right? He ruled the
yeah, yeah.
stage. So he was crushing small stages like theaters and I'm sorry, excuse me, colleges,
Yeah.
universities, small venues like the Toad's Place in Connecticut or the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, very
Mhm.
small rooms and blowing it up like he's in an arena. You know, that was one of his incredible. Well, actually, it's to me, it's his strongest point was his live performance, and he didn't consider himself a singer. He considered himself an entertainer. You know, that's how
I
he
can
saw
see that.
himself.
I mean, his songs did have a lot more
Mm.
production in them and more theater in them sometimes than just a regular song. Like if you're gonna hear a
Yeah,
song from Meatloaf,
bombastic.
you better pack a lunch
Yeah.
because you're looking at 7 to 15 minutes for a song. So I'll be like, if I'm gonna hear an album, I'm like, I just want to hear something quick.
That's right.
I'm on the
Yeah.
way. I
Yeah.
can't listen to it. And the next thing you know, but then if you hear a Meatloaf song, you're like, well, there goes 15 minutes. I gotta sit down and hear the whole song now because I can't stop. It's like it's a commitment to a
That's
song.
right.
You know, you can't have to do a Meatloaf song.
Yeah. When I first yeah when I got the phone call to audition from Kazim Sultan called me
I
and
love
he said, "Hey,
Cassie.
I'm
He's
gonna
great.
I'm
He's
gonna
a
send
talent
you
himself.
a live board mix." Oh yeah, he's
Oh,
amazing. He's amazing.
he is amazing.
Kazim is incredible.
I've had him on.
I
He's
uh,
great.
I I got a I yeah I got a board mix. Yeah, I got a board mix, a CD they sent to me to prepare. And I remember they said, learn Paradise by the Dashboard Light and Bat Out of Hell. I'm like, all right. So I get the CD and I'm listening to Paradise. I'm not kidding. Paradise was, I think it was 17 minutes long on this. I'm like, oh my God. And Bat Out of the Hell was probably 12 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I had to learn these arrangements. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, some bands, and you hear like, oh, I
Yeah.
joined this band and I learned it on the way over to Argentina. I learned 15 songs on the way over. You're like,
Yeah.
it took me so long to learn those two songs from
Yeah.
properly. I mean, and that's the thing where
Yeah.
it's definitely an investment, and it's his whole heart and soul is into it. So to see him have Bad Eye 2 and come back, and then 3 and in the neighborhood and all the other stuff you guys did, to see him come back and have that, like finally stay up on that certain level of music shelf where he was finally not, you know what I mean, being like pop album, this album, from the outside, it was great to see him finally get that. The accolades, and it seems like the
Yeah.
fans that like were our age growing up listened to him said, no, this is Meatloaf. We love him. So when his peers, some of the younger, even rockers, were like popping in, writing songs, I mean, like your John Bon Jovi stuff, when you had people of that generation, which were the pop stars, were kind of coming and saying, this is Meatloaf. This is a good performer, songwriter, singer. That kind of, I think, helped give him some credit where he needed it, where he should have had it with other people. You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Meat, it's, yeah, Meat loved John Bon Jovi.
he's a
He
hard
was
worker, that
always,
John.
yeah, he was always very respectful when he spoke about him. Admired him, thought he was a really brilliant guy, and he gave us a great song to record on Hang Cool Teddy Bear sessions called I Saw Elvis in Vegas. Really cool song.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So happy to see all this stuff. And I really think, really, what's really great is you coming in and being like a right hand guy. Like, really, it was a good
Oh,
time to work with him. I think you really, you know, I mean, Jim may have been his songwriting. They may have been used to each other, but you really were his heart and soul. To keep him
oh,
going.
that's very, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. We finished Hang Cool Teddy Bear, which was an incredible record.
It is.
I I'm gonna go on a limb and say, it's probably my second favorite record from him. We had Bad at the Hell and then Hang Cool's. I think that's my second favorite. And I produced two others, right? I produced two, and I still think Hang
Yeah.
Cool's is better. That was a great time. The session with Rob Cavallo
Hmm.
and Doug McKeon. I mean, the talent in that room was incredible. The songs were great. So we came off that tour, and Meat kind of he went away mentally,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going to allow that. I got my ass down to Austin where he lived, and I got him off the couch. Said, "There's no way you're sitting on your ass. We're getting back to work." And I pushed him and I showed him. I said, "Look, we can get this done." Everything at that time was very budget oriented. And I said, "Look, I can get this record done for this amount of money." And he's like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And then we went in. That's how we did it. And then we went into Braver Than We Are after that. It was just, I felt it important to keep him busy. So thank you for noticing that.
Well, I think it's important. You're welcome. I mean, I like the albums that you guys have all done too. I mean,
Thank you.
Bad at Hell, you came. I almost came and count that as being my favorite album because that's just like awesome. It's like it's so good. You can't even count that as a big, with other albums because it's so
Sure.
good. Like the way it broke down songwriting, it was record breaking away like a Zeppelin, or like I mean, it was just a first of something was so. But I think I think for me, like really from Bad at Hell 2 on, like to the on, he was really firing on all cylinders to do each album better. And I think for you like he's the talent and the raw creativity, but he's also had years of being physically and mentally burnt out from prior exposure to the music industry. You know what I mean? That raw talent, whereas you kind of came in, a different perspective. You had the same musical talent, so you kind of put the foundation, but also kind of helped guide all that raw talent. So together, you kept that focus. You know what I mean? But you were also had the
Thank
skills
you.
to keep it together with him. If you weren't talented yourself, you would have been like two talented people going everywhere. You also had your drive. I think helped propel him. You know, which
Thank you.
you're
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you. There's a good point there. Good point. Meat, the number one uh, thing that would get you fired, complacency. He hate he hated complacency. And I believe the reason why Meat and I got along so well is because of the work ethic that my father instilled in me. I I'm never not working. I'm always working. I work on Christmas Day. I just can't help myself. I and Meat appreciated that. He would call me for something, and I'd get right on it. I didn't wait. I stopped whatever I was doing. If he asked for something, I'd get it done that day.
Yeah,
Things like that. And in the studio, I got to know him so well that he felt very safe. There was a very that's the only word I can use, a very safe room. Meat and I, when we were in a room together, he knew I was going to push him as far as I could push him because I knew him so well, and nothing would leave the room until we felt it was great, both of us. Now, whether the rest of the world felt it was great, that didn't matter.
right.
Is what we felt was great, what we were getting, and
Well,
and and it just worked. you know?
Well, that's the producer side of you. I mean, and you're also, I mean, it's not enough days to talk about everything you do. Your production is fantastic also. I really enjoy it. I would just
Thank
go
you.
for recording,
Thank
so
you.
I also big fan of
Oh,
production.
cool.
But I think that's one of the downsides a lot of bands don't do. Like you'll have two artists, you'll have and I'm not saying it's Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, but you have two artists that write and they go against each other to write songs. But sometimes you talk to an artist, and I've done this before, where there's not a trust or they record separately. Some of the best stuff you get is if you record somebody, even if you push them back and forth, you got to have that trust to have the artist push out even further. Very rarely is somebody
That's
not
right.
trusting you
That's
where
right.
you're going to go past that peak because they don't want to look bad if they don't have that trust. They're going to stay safe, even though what they're safe is exceptional and everyone else in the world thinks it's exceptional. In the studio, you know there may be more, but if they're not going to push it, because who wants to feel, vulnerable or sound bad
That's right.
at that level when everybody's
That's right.
looking at you? It's even worse. There's more pressure.
That's right.
It's
That's
only
right.
harder when you get more successful. You know.
Yeah, that's right. I have a funny story on the same topic. Brian May told me this. Great
Yeah.
story. They were mixing "We Are the Champions,"
Hmm.
final stages, and at that time, consoles didn't have automation, right? So you had 8 to 10 hands on the console at any one time moving, and if somebody messed up, you had to drop the mix again, right? You
Huh.
understand?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so okay, so We Are the Champions. Freddie and Brian were, moving faders, and Brian was on guitars, Freddie was on vocals, and they were both annoying each other because Freddie's going to Brian, the guitars aren't loud enough, and Brian's going, well, Freddie, it's stepping on the vocal, and there were some words back and forth, so they decided to switch positions. Now Brian's on vocals and Freddie's on guitar, so the mix that you're hearing on News of the World is Freddie pushing guitars and Brian pushing vocals. That's a cool story. Yeah, a true
Well, that
story.
is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good. That's really kind of refreshing because it gives you perspective. Even at the
yeah,
time you don't get it, but afterwards you step back, you're like,
yeah,
I get it. Yeah, I learned
yeah,
production with the time when you were still learning how to do splicing and punch-ins. So yeah,
yeah,
it was a different world. But I think, and then that's as a side story, we go for hours on that. That
yeah.
kind of production mind as a musician coming in, it's a shame a lot of those musicians are aging out now because just the time period. There's a skill set that was left there that is kind of carried over, even down to digital. That still
Oh my
make
God, yes.
that is, but that it's almost like school that you went to of learning
Mm.
that way has made them such better musicians. Like you hear, like so and so can come in and just shoot it out now because they learned their trade of the punch in, punch out. Like you had to get it right. You had to be that where you didn't have all these effects and stuff. So you kind of came in more prepared. You knew yourself. You've already
Mm.
put the effort in, the homework,
Yeah,
And nowadays, I don't hear producers getting the same kind of thing because they know, you know,
yeah.
you can do
Even
15 songs.
understanding.
But,
Yeah, I mean, even understanding something so basic as tape saturation, and
mhm,
being careful with it, understanding what needs to be saturated and what does not. Input level, gain staging, just those things. You know, don't exist anymore. You
no,
know. Yeah,
it's a different world, and it makes the album sound different. And I think
yeah.
sometimes it changes the song dynamic because there's so much more you can do. I think it
Mm,
pushes people more the creativity changed a little bit, and that's why I think a lot of the older
yeah.
artists, you could say legacy, and I mean legacy in a good way,
Sure.
have an extra sprinkle of that magic songwriting still that maybe not as many people are getting because they're not experiencing that same kind of production. Maybe
Well, you
you
know
know,
what? Let me. That was obviously I'm generalizing, but I'm
and
thinking
that's
about
my
right
opinion.
now.
That's just my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, right now we have like David Grohl, right?
Yep.
Who definitely understands tape saturation.
Oh yeah.
I can't think of a more honest guy right now off the top of my head, right? Or an honest band like the Foo
No, I
Fighters.
use him as
They
an
do it
example all the time
real.
too because he does so much. He's
Yes.
such an easy example
Yeah.
to use.
Yeah. I mean, the Foo Fighters, they do it right. They're using
Mhm.
tape machines and they're not trying to get things perfect. They're going for vibe.
Oh yeah. And he
Commendable.
tries new things. But you try new things, and you have
Yeah.
a good reputation. And whether and even if you don't like him
Yeah.
or not, I enjoy him. But I mean, even if you don't like the kind of music, you still have to respect the work ethic, the kindness, the openness. Or play with any type of music. He loves all types of music. I was just watching a movie the other day,
Yeah.
laughing watching his movie. It's sad to watch it with Taylor. I was dreading watching it to see it. I couldn't imagine. But but the amount of musicality that and effort he puts into everything he does. He's like, I did an album with this producer, totally not a commercial rock producer. The album probably didn't do as well, but man, that's what he had to imagine in his mind, and he wanted to do it. That's music. That's why you do it. That's why you're
Yeah.
working on Christmas Day because you have a song in your head. You have this pull.
Yeah.
It's not about work. It's about I
Yeah.
can't not do it. It's just driving me. You know.
Yeah.
and I think that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing that you've carried over, and that's and I want people to know to check out because I was even 100% aware of what was going on after Meat had passed in this band that you guys have Neverland Express, right? How fantastic you guys are! Like it's not a tribute, it's not this, it's this band,
Thank you.
and you guys brought in another
Yeah.
singer, and you can probably expand it more, another singer, and one piece before I have you speak on it is the danger of having another singer is that either you if you replicate it too much, you become a cover band sort of, but if you don't do it, the artist has their own style and it takes it over to a way where it's like when Paul Rogers did a thing with Queen, it worked because they were both established. But then when Queen had Adam come in, that was Adam's actual style, and so he could still be Adam Lambert to sing with Queen. So it fit differently, but almost felt better in a way for the songs to be honored.
It is
But it's
better.
still right,
No,
which is still
it's
right or wrong.
totally better.
Right, right. But Paul Rogers is still a great
Yeah.
singer, and it was great the way he did it, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
But Adam stayed who he
Yeah.
was. But Adam's not that singer. That is who he is. And when he ever goes solo to solo stuff, it's gonna be like that. That's his voice. That's who he is. So to that point, you guys had to find a singer, and Meat was still around and alive, and just you can explain to why that was an interesting piece to bring in. How do you fill that spot? You know what I mean? So it fits right. So maybe at this point
Yeah.
you could
Thank you.
probably
It's a great
jump in.
question. Yeah, a great question. I don't know how much detail you want to get in on this.
Whatever you
We
feel
were
fits right.
this is like June. Okay, this is like June 2016, right? And we're
Yeah.
in Edmonton. Meat passes out on stage. Um, we had the whole Braver Than We Are tour in front of us starting in August in Europe. Long story short, that tour got canceled. Meat never came back on stage. Now we're in May 2017, and me being the music director, kind of holding the reins here for the boss. I'm getting panic phone calls from the band.
Yeah.
We need to work. So okay, I call the boss. I have this idea. You know what? I'm gonna get the band on the road. I'm gonna get somebody else to sing it, and this way we stay oiled. The Neverland Express stays moving
No, I can't
for
believe no one's
him.
done that before, though. I can't think of other bands doing that before. That's a
Yeah,
great idea. Like, there's other
yeah.
singers that have
So
done
you
this
know
in the
what? So I
past.
called him. Yeah, so I called. Hey, boss, I got this idea. Look, we're losing the band. Let me get the guys on the road. I'm gonna get somebody in front, and we'll keep it oiled. We'll keep it oiled, like I said, so that when you're ready to come back, you just step in. And I remember he was quiet. I mean, dead silent for probably 15 seconds, which is an eternity on the phone. And then he just says, "Okay," like that. And he goes, "Well, who are you gonna get to sing?" I said, "Can I curse here?"
Yeah,
I
you're
don't know
grown
if I
up. You can
can.
do what you want.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I go, I have no fuck. Yeah, I go, I have no fucking idea. He goes, yeah. So even at that time, I didn't know. It was just I wanted to let Meat know what I was thinking.
Right.
And I should say, before calling Meat, I called management. I called Tom Consolo. I called Terry Doty. I called his personal manager and his business manager, and I told him what I wanted to do. And both of them were like, "Well, good luck, Paul." Like sarcastically, just because Meat is very alpha male. But he understood the importance of it. Thankfully. So
Yeah.
he was there the whole way, the entire way. I was throwing singers at him. I'm not going to say other ideas I had. I don't want to do that.
No.
But we finally, serendipity, you know, found Caleb Johnson. It was an amazing, amazing
Yeah, it sounds
find.
great.
And yeah, and when I told Meat was like, great, because Meat knew who he was from American Idol.
Hmm.
And even when Caleb won American Idol, there were comparisons to Meatloaf, and Meat even chimed in when he won. And like you said, when Caleb came in, it was important that we from right up from the onset, I never wanted to find a Meatloaf impersonator. I didn't want to go there.
You
I needed
can't
to
do
find
that.
somebody. Yeah, I needed to find somebody who had the range and who had the vibe. Who could take on that enormous sound.
Right.
And that's all I cared about. And it was challenging, and we got very lucky, very lucky.
Well,
So, and then as we were moving, I
yeah.
remember we came out of the gates with playing Bat Out of Hell from it, how the whole way, how it runs. And it wasn't working. So I remember calling him. John Michelli and I were at the airport in St. Louis after a gig. And I said, "Hey, boss," got him on the phone. "We're having trouble with the set list." He's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're doing Bat of the Hell in its entirety, from start to finish." He goes, "You can't do that." I was like, "Because it doesn't work." And I said, "Obviously." He goes, "What do we do?" So for the longest time, the set list that we had, he built for us. That's how we were performing it. We've kind of moved away from it now. Like recently, we added some Rocky Horror elements, which work really well.
I'll bet.
And now venues are asking for, the common thing to do now is they want to see two sets with an intermission. We had to break things up. So the set list now is altered from what Meat first gave us. But he was that involved with the whole process.
So there could be two questions. And actually, there's a third one. So let me just say them first. So the first thing is, and I want you to answer this last. Is I know you said Meat had passed out on stage. And I heard you say before that Meatloaf used to pass out all the time on stage. If you could kind of give me a little more information. Yeah, every night. I'm kind of curious about that. But I want to say one thing. I know you said that you talk to management and they kind of like, yeah, good thing. I do think, and not knowing Meatloaf, but not knowing anybody, but knowing you guys, you and Meatloaf, and any other musicians speak a different language. Musicians to musicians, or people, a business guy to a music person, are going to have different things and different history. You and Meat coming in, talk music. It wasn't about anything else for the most part. So them saying good luck is like, well, the odds were already better for you because you spoke with them. You had a different relationship with them. So it wasn't like so out there. You had his ear. You know what I'm saying? Like musically with respect. Not like you're saying like, hey, I think you should buy some stock. He'd be like, get out of here. I got people for that. But you're like, musically, we have a production, we have business, we have rules. I want to keep these guys going. You know how hard it is to bring in people that can do a performance well, an intricate work. Same thing like with the Zappa show. You can't let people go idle. They got bills. But at the same time, you've got your struggles and we want to be ready to switch it out. I mean, that is the perfect plan. So
that's great. Thank you so much for saying that.
That's a different language now, you guys are speaking.
That's great. Yeah. Now, I was very involved in business with Meatloaf. This is a great thing. Meat was my greatest mentor besides my father in my life. Brian May too still is an incredible mentor with me. I run everything by Brian constantly.
Do you?
And he lets me know when I suck, which I really love. And Meat was the same way. Now, the things that Meatloaf did for me, business-wise, he opened up the touring books to me. I saw all the expenses, because we were building tours together. When I came on as music director, he then brought me in on production. He'd send me out. I was hiring the road crew, things like that. Now when I say hiring the road crew, obviously the business management does that.
No, I know, but I'm saying
he had me fishing out, finding. Totally, yes. But I wanted to let you know how much he taught me. So by the time we had this idea to go out as a Neverland Express, I was already very vested, very knowledgeable of how Meatloaf ran business. So I started things the exact same way Meatloaf did. We brought on Meat's business manager to look over things. I wanted Meatloaf to see every penny that came in, and he did. He was aware of everything that was going on. Just wanted to let you know that. Yeah.
The other thing that was fantastic, and you were going to share, I had three questions. One of them was, so when you first started doing this without, he knew who you was going to sing, but you were doing a set list without him knowing at first? Like he wasn't really involved in that part until.
Yeah, the only way I could say that was I didn't know how far to bother him with things, So I, once I got the permission and once I got the okay on things, things moving, getting the wheels going, I'd only touch him here or there with thought process. I didn't want to bother him. Obviously we gave him notification on every show booked, so he knew what was happening on that end. But on the creative end, I was a little gun shy to approach him with things.
I understand that. I'm just surprised he wasn't concerned.
I think that was the turning point.
Yeah, I was surprised he was like, "Hey, send me a tape, send me a video of that. I want to see what's going on." He saw videos online. Okay.
But we re-recorded Bat of the Hell in its entirety, and we sent him all that, obviously, and he gave us his incredibly strong critiques on things, which was great. you know. Yeah, so he saw all that stuff, yes. But as far as live stage creativity, the turning point was when John and I called him about the set list. And then at that point I would just say, hey man, this is working, that's not working, things like that. And he was always open to it.
Okay, I mean that's important. Because I mean, I would be, maybe it's just my nature. I'm like, at that point now, I'm looking at what I think Meat's view would be, looking at it through my eyes. I'd be like, I'd want to know because my name's on it, more or less, and
Yeah.
it's going to be representing
Yeah.
me. I'd want to know exactly what it looks like. Even if I'm at home and not feeling
Yeah.
good, I'm still thinking, and I can watch TV, and I got the internet, and I got all this technology. I can still be involved, as a
Yes.
producer. So to
Well,
me, the
yeah,
fact he gave
well,
me that
we
much
would
is
call him.
flattering.
I'm sorry.
It's flattering
Yes,
that
but
he
we would
gave me
actually
that
call him
much.
from the dressing room.
Okay.
Yeah, we would call him from the dressing room. We on tour, for since day one working with Meatloaf, we had a thing called the kill, right? Whereas right before we went on stage, the band would get together and we would do this routine, what are we gonna do? Kill, and we put our hands in the middle, that kind of thing. So we would call him before the shows and we would do a kill over the phone too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times he wouldn't answer, but I always called him. And a few times we got successful with the kill, he'd do it with us, So, I always tried to involve him, as much as possible in that aspect.
It's clearly very important, and obviously he wasn't always involved because obviously he was probably dealing with his own stuff, as we as humans do in our mortality. So the fact that you kept faithful and on track probably allowed him the extra um, areas to do his own stuff and not worry about, oh God, what's going on with my career, this or that. I got Paul. I got a solid man steering the ship, the Meatloaf ship. You know what I mean? I can kind of breathe and worry
Thank
about
you.
myself. I think that was probably,
Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome. I can only imagine that's got to be what it was going
Thank
through
you.
because I know he had some health issues. And after he fought so long to get back up from, he started off at the top. Well, was at the top. But the album, first one came out. The first one came out. Everyone was all eyes on him, and then he got kind of knocked down. So to get back up again, you don't have to worry about that struggle. Like at least he could be like, all right, I can take my eyes
Yeah.
off of this and go here because I'm not going to go off course again. You know, he had to claw
Yeah.
his way up.
Yeah.
So that's important, and I think it's also important, in fact, to get the band going because that's a lot of money for a lot of homes and people and lives. It's not just about a sound. That's like
Yeah, that's
employment. Now,
right.
that's what we're saying
Now,
about John Bon Jovi does that. Like Bon Jovi's a business, and they can say, well, the vocals were different or this tour was different. Why was he doing that? Well, I can tell you from the outside, as a person, he committed certain amounts of things to concerts, and everybody's finances depended on that. So if he took time off because he could afford it,
hmm,
depending on what people were saying about his voice or whatever, I'm not going there. I think personally, he had the responsibility of taking care of all these families first. That's who I think his headset was at first, despite everybody jumping on him, because there is a business and there's other people that work for you. Your roadies and your this and that.
yeah,
Everyone's got to pay the bills. And by you doing this,
you're
you
exactly
kept people
right.
working.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
It
you.
is
That's what
music,
this is. It's
music
exactly right.
business. The
That's
business.
exactly right. That's exactly right. Meat wanted the Neverland Express to keep working. He said those words exactly.
Yeah.
We're out here doing it because that's what Meat said we should do, and we're grateful to have Caleb Johnson, who is approaching the gig as Caleb Johnson. He's not trying to be Meatloaf. We're just incredibly fortunate that the guy has a huge voice and can handle this material,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a physical. There's a visual about him. It's a larger than life thing that just works, To have somebody on stage really skinny, I don't know if that would work, I don't know. I haven't seen it, you know. Hmm.
I think
Obviously,
it
there are
depends on the
singers
person.
out there who probably do this who are skinny.
I think there's a thing. It's
Yeah,
funny because you think
yeah.
of a lot of small singers that have a really loud, like a Bruce
Hmm.
Dickinson and Ryan James Dio, were like loud. You can say, well, because their torsos are small. Like you could go to all kinds of crazy theories. But sometimes, like somebody and you meet them, and it's like
Yeah,
I always thought they were bigger. So I always think like the personality, like is who the singer. You need a big personality who could fill the fluffy, ruffly shirts and put the bravado in there because you got to
yeah,
deliver it. You
yeah,
can't not partially do that. You cannot sing dressed like that with those songs and
yeah,
people go, that looks cool. Because that's not like you would not walk around because they're
yeah,
going, that guy looks cool. Like he did it in a way you're like, that looks cool. I could never do it. No one else could
yeah.
do it. And I
I
think that
know.
takes So like when you meet people and you think, I thought you were much taller because that's what the person. I knew people like that. My father-in-law, before he passed, I'm like, I always imagined him being way bigger. And I see a picture, I'm like, I forget that he was shorter than me because to me, he was a giant, you know. And I think you need a giant personality to project that. It doesn't have to be physically, but at
Yeah.
least like emotionally or vocally for that position. Maybe.
Yeah, and also you also get people like you don't realize how tall they are until you meet them.
Oh my God,
I
yeah.
remember like Anthrax. We performed on the Conan O'Brien show like 1995,
Oh,
and I couldn't
he was
believe how
tall.
tall Conan was.
Yeah.
It was like he's like close to 7 feet almost, right? I'm exaggerating. What is he like
No,
6'8"? I don't know,
he is.
but
He's really
it's like
tall. You
what
see him.
the yeah,
He is a big dude, but you don't
yeah,
think about that as far as
yeah, yeah,
side by sides. I'm sure next to you got
yeah.
Scott and stuff, and the size of the band. A lot of smaller guys in Anthrax, and you got Conan. It probably just seemed like some kind of the dynamic was a
Yeah,
bit bigger, right? But the guys in Anthrax
yeah,
also.
yeah,
Scott seems like he's like another 30
yeah,
feet tall, but size wise, he's not a
yeah,
monster. But his personality and his
yeah,
playing,
yeah,
he's a giant.
yeah,
And those are all things of
yes. Scott
compliments. These are all
Ian,
compliments. Compliments is what that is.
Scott Ian is Scott Ian is unbelievable.
Monster.
Talk about it. Talk about a talent, and a guy that is in control of his universe. A thrash metal thing. He's wow. That guy's amazing. Well, the Anthrax band in general, they've always amazed me. That
Yeah.
early on, even before I started working with them, I saw them at this place called Union Jack in South River, New Jersey,
Mhm.
1984. And they were unbelievable, and thrash was still very, very young at that time. I went into the venue not really knowing what I was going to hear. I used to go to this place called Rock and Roll. It's the flea market, and it was
Yeah.
Route 18. It's a place where John Zazula had.
Yeah.
He had all these great imports. It's called Rock and Roll Heaven. And we used to go there on Saturdays, and he introduced us to like Venom and all these really cool metal bands from Europe. And he was the one that introduced us to Anthrax. When I say us, I mean like my brother and my friends.
Right.
And they had the show at Union Jack. I went down and saw him, and it was the craziest thing I ever saw. I never heard a drummer like that up until that time. Anthrax really had something going on. And I remember then seeing them at the Capitol Theater on Among the Living. And I remember thinking, wow, these guys are going to pop. You saw they had Joey Belladonna up there, right? And it was like it was like shaking. It was about to blow up. You knew it was happening. And then boom, there it went, you know, amazing.
Well, then that's the thing. It's really crazy. And then like finding out that Charlie writes a lot of the songs, and that goes back to drummers playing guitar, and then Dave Grohl playing guitar, and always playing with that rhythm. And then you go back, you listen to songs, you talk about the rhythm, Charlie, Dave, and you listen to Foo Fighters and Anthrax, you go, I get it. And then talk to a lot of people, even if they're not drummers now, they go, you know what? I
Yeah,
played the guitar like I play like a drummer, even though I don't even play drums. Like a lot of people approach it like that as a guitar player, which is interesting. I never really thought about it. I always heard
yeah,
melody.
okay,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now look, yeah, yeah. Charlie writes all of the music, not some of it.
okay.
Everything that you're familiar with Anthrax, Charlie
Yeah.
wrote. Scott Scott writes the lyrics.
Okay.
That's how it started. I should say
Okay. Yeah, I'm not
all
ever
the
behind the
Anthrax
doors. I never
records, like
like being
Among the Living.
100%. You know what I mean? With anything, I never know what the artist behind the doors. So I never like to be 100%
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
learned to
Now
be
look,
careful.
yeah. Now, I mean, I'm not a part of the writing process now. Obviously, I never was a part of the writing process. I was around it, but it was always Charlie in control musically. Now, I haven't been in the studio with them in years,
You're right.
but I know that now Frankie is involved heavily on song arrangements and riff ideas, and I believe he's
But
in on lyric as well.
he's
But the
exploded in his
Anthrax
bass
sound,
playing though, too, though. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I mean, he's
yeah.
coming
Now
at
the
you.
Anthrax, yeah, yes, yeah. Now look, now Anthrax too. The thing about Anthrax that I always admired was their live performance. I always felt that they had the most energy out of all the thrash bands. There was something up there that they just commanded the stage. Like I would I think it'd be really cool to see Anthrax opening for Metallica on that stadium tour. I would love to see Frankie Bello and Scott up there on that huge stage in that stadium. I
It would
can
make
imagine it
sense.
being really badass. Yeah, because those guys are animals on stage. The other guys in thrash, I'm not knocking anybody, please. I'm not knocking anybody.
No, no.
You got like you guys like Kerry King or Tom Araya, who are unbelievable, right? But these guys aren't physical moving entities on
Right.
stage. They plant and they crush. They're amazing. You got a guy like Frankie Bello, who's an animal physically. Boom, he's exploding. I can't imagine him on that Metallica stage. Oh, wait,
Well,
I hope to see that.
you know what it is well, as long as Charlie's playing with Pantera, nobody's doing anything. But I think that they were like an arena rock band with a thrash sound because a lot of
Oh,
thrash bands
Pantera's
didn't move around like that.
amazing.
No, I'm saying
Oh,
well, a lot of bands
so
didn't move
great.
around. Besides Pantera and Anthrax, a lot of the bands like Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer, they kind of stood in one spot. Fantastic albums, big fan. I've seen them all. All the concerts. But I'm saying, but of the bands that move around, it was really Pantera, Anthrax. I'm sure people chime in, whatever. But I'm saying off the top of my head,
Of
there's a
course.
reason why they even become even more beloved to some people because
Yeah.
visually you can feel the energy when they're running around. It's like an extra layer to this the of the enjoyment.
I remember the first time I saw Pantera live, early 90s. And I remember feeling like being taken aback. I felt like, I hope I don't get crushed here. I felt like I was almost seeing Van Halen.
Yeah.
It was just like, because Dimebag had this incredible personality, and visually he was stunning to me, and how he commanded uh, the stage, and
What?
how, I'm talking about the
Oh,
vibe of the band, right?
oh
Even
yeah.
even like Rex, how Rex would just kind of, he would just
Stalk.
kind of stalk and kind of glue himself to Vinny,
Hmm.
who was also amazing, right? With these incredible drum sounds, right? But then you had Phil up front, who to me is incredible. He's an incredible front man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we know Pantera is amazing. They were amazing, and I'm so grateful that when I say we, I mean Anthrax. We toured with them a lot. I remember going to Mexico, playing Monterrey, Mexico with them, and it was off the hook how great they were.
What was great about them, I'm gonna tell you, I love the fact the way the rhythm section took over and allowed space for the guitar solo because in the albums, obviously, there's so much guitar layering. How they worked well, just holding a spot for him, and he could do the solo with the percussion. Like their solos, when he did a solo and the drums and bass sounded so different than any other band. It was so special the way they held the bottom end for him, where he could just go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like they were just
Well,
ready
yeah,
to go with them.
yeah.
That
A
was just
lot of that,
tight.
yes, a lot of that had to do with the guitar sound.
Yeah.
And you had Vinny kind of engineering the records, right? And he and Dime, developing their sound together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you had Dime's sound was very scooped, right? It had no mid range, which left a lot of room for snare drum. So Vinny had this beautiful, like fat snare. It's kind of like the Led Zeppelin thing. The reason why Bonham's sound was so huge is because Jimmy Page's sound was so small. It left room for that huge drum sound. So that Pantera production is just this, how the instruments were EQ'd. It was just this beautiful thing that Vinny just had. His ears are great.
He was a good producer. I think that's I don't think that's funny because we never
Yeah.
really talked about that. The production and the sound and allowing room for each instrument and being generous enough
Yes.
to give and take
Yeah.
on the spot of it allowed them to be even sound even different, but cool, but rise above because they had their own sound, but they also gave room. They weren't like I should be in this frequency, I should be here. Everybody had their spot, and it worked. You know, and they didn't. That's one thing they
That's
never really
right.
changed up
And
was
also, yeah. And also they had Terry Dayton in their corner too, an incredibly talented guy, right?
mm-hmm,
And they had Sterling Winfield, an engineer, so they
yep,
had a really strong team around them. So you have a producer in the room who is glued to your vibe, right? Because Terry's amazing. Then you have
yep.
this, the drummer. I mean, you can go on a lot. We can go on and on about
I know we could do
Pantera,
it. I know we
how
could, but
important they
it
are.
was the perfect. Not only were they the four most different
Yeah.
guys, but also musically, um, speaking well together. They had the perfect talent around them that understood them and allowed them,
Yeah.
and that's why you had the
Yes.
4, 5, 6 albums that you couldn't touch. That run,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
magical. And but the energy was the same. And I go back to Anthrax, it was the same thing with those guys. They kind of knew their spots, and even from bass to vocals, like everybody as musicians grew, and you could see them grow on the albums. It
Yeah.
was just like
Yeah.
all the way through. Each album got better and better. And then even though it didn't work
Yeah.
vocally, I was still a fan with John. And then when
Oh,
John left, I'm still right. And then I'm still a fan of John, and I'm still a fan of Anthrax with Joey. So like to me, it was just like, all right, trading out, high five. No, not really a high five, but you know what I'm saying. Like I'm fine with what they
what's
want.
amazing? Yeah, what's amazing to me? Like Joey Belladonna, the guys are still playing the songs in the original keys, and Joey's crushing it live, crushing it. John Bush to me sounds better than he's ever
Yep.
had. I recently heard some stuff from John. Recently, over redundant there. John is crushing it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back on some studio stuff. I remember talking about Pantera and engineering, and Charlie Benante. When we did Volume 8, I engineered that and co-produced that record. We brought in Dimebag and Phil's talents for that record. I remember we were on the Pantera tour, and I managed to slip a Mackie console and an ADAT into the bus, into the bay of the tour bus, so that when we got on the road, I set up a studio in Phil's dressing room because he wanted them to do some vocal tracks. And wow, man, it was incredible. Okay, so imagine this. It's probably 1 in the afternoon. A couple days prior. Hey, Phil, so we got a couple song ideas. I want to know if you want to do this. Yeah, yeah, sure. Phil's like, yeah, yeah, sure. Just put it in my dressing room. All right. So a couple days later, I set it up one morning. I don't know. Phil comes in at like 1 in the afternoon. He's in his underwear. Probably some kind of death metal shirt. Doom metal shirt. But he's definitely in boxers, right? No
Yeah.
shoes. And I gave him a 57 SM57,
The workhorse.
and we just turned up the monitors in this dressing room. No isolation. So if you go to Volume 8, you listen to Phil's parts. There's no isolation. 57 in the room, cranked, and he screams his ass off, and it was shuddering how powerful it was. I remember because it was John Bush and I in the room, and I remember
Yeah.
John going like, "Holy shit!" after the first take. Mind blowing, And I remember Dimebag submitting solos. I have no problem saying this. I believe it was Inside Out song, and Dimebag submitted the solo, and Charlie didn't like it. Charlie went back to Dimebag and said, "No, man, it's not right." And Dimebag's, "What do you mean it's not right?" And Charlie's like, "You can do better." No, it's true story.
That's
That's
awesome.
balls, right? And Charlie's like, "No, you can do better. You can do better." And I was like, "Right on, Charlie." And he did. He pushed Dimebag, and we got a great solo out of it. That's another reason why Meatloaf and I got along, because I never had a problem saying no to him, ever.
What are the plans? Because you got some tours dates already set up on the website. You guys redid the Bat Out of Hell. It's fantastic. It's a fun interpretation because it's clearly very similar to it. It just feels like it has a little fresh energy because it's a little different voice. You know what I mean, it feels like a younger version. It's fun.
Well,
I like it. The album.
thank
So
you. Well,
featured.
you know what we
Well,
did for that? What you're hearing on Paradise Found is the actual live arrangements.
okay.
This is how we did them live. This is how Meatloaf coached us, and these are actually our arrangements that we developed with him. Which is why it's not a tribute. You can't tribute yourself. Okay,
Right.
we have Meatloaf DNA in us. Every step of the way is Meatloaf's DNA. You know.
No, and well, that's the thing. I've said this. I think it's my thing lately is like the Queen you can't copy Freddie Mercury. There's only one Freddie Mercury. You can't copy Meatloaf. There's only one. There's a reason why there's only one everything. So why be that? You're never gonna do better than Meatloaf on a Meatloaf song because that's the originator. You can't. So you want to do your best, and it has to sound good. and it
Yeah,
does sound good. I really enjoyed it. I've listened to the whole album. I've listened to it like twice already since I've come
thank
across
you,
it. And you're welcome. I really enjoy it, and I'll put the link on for everybody to the website, either whether you're streaming it or listening
thank
to
you, thank you,
whatever. Click on it, go listen to the whole album. It's fun. And I guess as I'm leading to is you have a
thank
couple
you.
dates set up for next year. You're welcome on the road. Is it going to fill in some of the dates because you have like a handful, but it's throughout the year? Is that now? Are you
Yeah,
just waiting
yeah,
for to kind of
yeah.
fill in?
Yeah, well, our agent, Day After Day Productions, they recently attended the expo in Nashville, which is where you present your talent, and all the promoters from the country, or actually around the world, go there to see what they can book. I'm talking about
Yeah,
casinos, fairs, and corporates,
yeah.
those kinds of things, which is kind of like where we live, right? So as we speak, Day After Day is assembling all of that and presenting us with shows every week. We have a lot of offers, but we have to make them work logistically, budget wise. You
Yep.
know, so I can't just go out. I can't go out on one day a weekend. Usually, sometimes we can. If the money's there, we can do that. You need two or three shows in a week to make it work. Because we're doing what you call weekend warriors. Warriors. You go
Yep.
out. Excuse me. We do what you call weekend warriors. You leave on a Thursday, come back on a Sunday, that kind of thing.
It's a great
But we
gig for
have
musicians,
we
by the
have
way.
our UK tour books. Yeah, yeah, we have our UK tour booked for September 2024. We have 8 shows. We have a couple more shows that we're going to announce very shortly that are going to tack on at the back end of that, which we're excited
Yep.
about. And then we have really awesome talks elsewhere around the world. I don't want to say right now, but that looks really great. We have shows coming in constantly in the States, and we'll be updating that. Hopefully January we'll have some really good information when you can find that on celebratingmeatloaf.com. How
And
about guitar questions? Because I know the guitar pretty well.
well, I know he was big on his sound, and I know he built a lot of it. And I know his father was good with coming to pick and the coin. They kind of all do that together. Had he, through the years, changed any kind of? Because obviously he was always doing the coin. Had he tried changing it up for other different sounds? You know what I'm saying? Had he said, you know what, this works for me. I'm gonna try something different now. Just go back to it, and then said, nope, nothing's as good, and go back to it. Or has he had a like once he had the sound, he's like, I'm good. Because guitarists, you tone chase. But
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a great question. Brian, unlike say Edward Van Halen, is
mhm.
not a tone chaser.
Okay.
Like Edward was always updating,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
I am
yeah.
too. I'm a tone chaser. Alex Lifeson is a tone chaser, right? Nuno Betancourt's not a tone chaser,
Yep.
right? That guy has a Marshall, he cranks the bass, and he has a rat pedal, and he's done, right? Right? Brian May, the only thing he's changed are his like what he puts in front as far as delays. In the early days, he had a rolling tape echo, and the guy was so smart. That's the tape, right? He
Yeah.
was so smart that he modified it by extending the wheels to go further to get a longer delay time, just by cutting it apart. Like he took like a knife to it, a saw, whatever, extended the tapes out, and that's how he got the Brighton Rock, 900 millisecond time. You know,
Oh.
now obviously now it's digital delay. All right, so that those kinds of things he changed, but the heart of the rig has not changed since day one, which he got from Rory Gallagher. It's a range, the tone with the range master uh, uh, treble booster into the AC30. Now, what Brian obviously has learned over the decades and decades of work is that the AC30s blow up. They were always blowing up, catching on fire because he took them to the limit, right? So he has them rewired by hand. All the solder joints, the motherboard is totally rewired by hand. The EQ section is fully bypassed. So there's no EQ. It's just volume knob. And that's the Brian May sound. He is the most simplest man you could ever meet. You'd never know it. I can't say it enough. Brian May, the astrophysicist, is the most simplest guy on the planet. You get a guitar into the treble booster, into the amp, and that's it. That's his sound. you know, and that's the same sound that we used in the We Were Rocky musical. You know, we had the AC30 and the treble booster right there in an ISO box. We had the ISO box was like 6x6x4. It was a huge box, and I had a AC30 in there cranked, you know, and it had the treble booster, and that's how we did the show too. You
Had
know,
you ever heard him
the
play? I'm sorry, step on you. Play a different guitar, like see, like yours and your pedal, like that's not his setup. And I ask this because, like, you know, like I've had people say, I
yeah,
picked up Eddie Halen's guitar, like, would it be like, and you know, I've heard a bunch of guitar players. They said, you know, I picked up Eddie's guitar and I played it, and he was just playing it sound like Eddie. He goes, I picked it up. It was Eddie's guitar, sounded nothing like Eddie. Eddie picked up my guitar.
yeah,
It wasn't rigged
yeah,
for him. It sounded like Eddie. Brian, I
that's right.
imagine, is the same way. Did he pick up like a different
Yeah,
guitar, a
exactly.
different tone?
No, there's no question. I mean, look at crazy little thing called Love. He uses Roger's Telly on that solo.
Okay.
You know, there you go. I mean, obviously, I've heard Brian play through my rig. You know, which is always awesome to hear.
I gotta
You know,
imagine that's be crazy to hear that because I mean that's your rig.
yeah, sounds like Brian May. You know, and I play through Brian's rig. You know, I do the best I can to sound like Brian because he taught me how to do it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there's incredible nuances there that I'll
Yeah.
never be able to capture.
That's what it really
Ever,
comes
I'll
down
never
to.
be able to capture those. You know, even though he's trained me so hard. You know, there's things that are just magic that you can't explain. And Brian is full of it. You know, he's full of magic.
That is crazy. So this is a question I'm gonna end you on. So with all these people you've known, you've worked with, like people you grew up loving and listening to, and then working with them as a peer, have you thought about maybe doing like a solo album, like a collaboration, like say, hey, maybe I could do a song with Brian, maybe I could do a song with, you know, some of the guys from Anthrax to play and like do like an album with a lot of the people you've worked with over the years of you, whether it's singing and vocal guitar with a band or just doing instrumental. Has that ever kind of been a process of yours or a thought?
I'm in the middle of
Oh,
it right now. Thank you so much for asking that.
oh,
So
okay.
here's what happened. About this time last year, I my very dear friend of mine who passed away in August, Bernie Marsden.
Oh,
He started Whitesnake with David Coverdale,
mhm.
and I've known Bernie since 1987. He took me under his wing, and he invited me out to his home in England, and we worked together. Wrote some cool stuff together. I was a kid at that time. Okay, so let's go back now. A year ago, I had this idea. You know what? Caleb is a huge Whitesnake fan,
Mhm.
and you know what? I would love to write a record like a Whitesnake Deep Purple record. You know, something that Caleb and I both love. So I reached out to Bernie and asked him if he wanted to do some songwriting. He said absolutely. So we set it up. Got out there last May,
Yeah.
right before our UK tour started. Caleb and I went out there early, a week early before the UK tour started, and we, set ourselves up in Buckinghamshire, which is where Bernie lived, and we went to Bernie's house, you know, a few days in that week, and we wrote a handful of songs together, the three of us. And I'm currently arranging those songs back at home now. The plan was to go back to England this past November, but we lost Bernie. I couldn't do it.
Right.
So we have a handful of songs that we're currently arranging, and the hope is to get this out by summer. So this will be the solo record that you're talking about, but
Right.
it's more of now. It's turned into a tribute with Bernie Marsden,
Right.
and I'm gonna invite Brian on it, obviously, and I have a couple other people who are really close to Bernie, some
Mhm.
incredible guitar players that I'm not going to mention right now because obviously I want to
Things
see if they'll
change.
be willing
Right.
willing to do it. You know, if it can
Right.
give a
Yeah.
solo here or there. And but that's what I'm working on at this very moment.
That's exciting.
You know,
Yeah.
Bernie was such an incredible influence on me, an incredible guitar player,
Songwriter too.
one of the blues greats. Just what's that?
He was a great songwriter. I mean,
I'm
he
sorry.
was that's what
Oh
great
yeah,
songwriter.
incredible. Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
You know, that's what I thought of. You know, when you think Bernie, I thought great guitar player slash great songwriter. I mean, that's just who he was. So you know, you
Oh,
knew
he showed me so much. He taught me so much as a kid. I was 20 years old when I was hanging with him. And man, he just taught me so much about vibrato. You know, just hand tone, and then moving, from there and developing all that, and then meeting Brian May and going really deep on vibrato, and Brian's approach to vibrato was so unique. I remember talking to Joe Bonamassa about this.
Yeah.
I remember sitting down. There's a producer, Kevin Shirley. I'm sure you know who this name is, right?
Yeah.
Kevin Shirley. Yeah, so Kevin's a very dear friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine too. I admire him very much. I was very fortunate to be on a record with him. He invited me in.
Yeah.
And when he was in Vegas, I used to live in Las Vegas. So when Kevin was out there doing a record with Joe Bonamassa, he invited me down to the studio. So of course I jumped at that and went down, and then we had dinner that night.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down at dinner with Joe, who was incredibly approachable, a beautiful human being, obviously very intelligent, and just a pleasure to be around, as is Kevin. And I just said, "Hey, Joe," I remember saying, "Joe," I go, "vibrato," like that. He goes, "Okay." And I go, "In or up?" He goes, "Definitely up." I went, "Cool." Because some players go in, they push through the neck. Like Brian imagines a small spring in the fretboard. He pushes into the neck as he goes up, right? He's pushing in. So Bonamassa's right to God. Wow, you know what I mean? I had the honor to actually study with Uli Roth. This is amazing.
He's another one,
Please. Oh my God. So I'm in Berlin, Germany. Yeah, I'm in Berlin, Germany. We had mutual friends. So I was texting with him. We had some equipment questions that we had to talk to each other. It just worked this way. I can't get into detail about it because I forget. But anyways, I'm texting with Uli Roth, and I get to Germany finally, and I'm in Berlin, and I invited him down to the show, and he came, and now he and I are in a dressing room together, and he's playing Ships of Karen in front of me. I'm sorry, Sales of Karen, excuse me.
Yeah.
Ships of Karen. What the hell am I talking about? Sales of Karen, excuse me. And then we get into everything. And what I'm getting at is he was the first guy I heard tell me about seeing color when you bend and when you shake. So Yuli, he would say to me, in his very hard German accent, "Don't use your ear, see color when you bend." So when he's shaking those notes, his intonation is so perfect, right? The guy is so beautiful in his playing. All he sees are colors. He sees different hues, like different reds going into oranges, depending upon pitch. And that's where he moves. He's never looking at his neck. He's just seeing things. Incredible.
I get that. I mean, I've had him on, and I've heard him talk, and because he looks at everything on a very different level. Yeah, well, that's it. It was him and Brian. So I just got one more to my collector set.
Wow.
But he is such a man that I just think he sees things on a level that's just so high up, the vibration, like it's so different. So it totally makes sense that everything he sees like that. I mean, it was such a great conversation and such a different conversation with him.
You know what? I have to look back at this. I was unaware of that, Sean. So forgive me. I'm going to look back at that when we're done here. Now, the thing about Yuli too, again, he's a very spiritual guy, which is why I resonate towards him as well. And Brian is really funny because he's incredibly spiritual, but he's also a scientist. Doesn't really make sense. He's the most spiritual scientist you could ever meet. It's funny, Yeah.
He is. But
yeah, so I remember I used to roadie for Michael Schenker too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to Michael. This is like 1992. I remember talking to Michael a lot. I was always infatuated by him, his vibrato. I remember asking him who was the guitar player he was most scared of. And he'd say Uli Roth. He's the only guy that he ever thought of was like incredible to him.
And that's a lot coming from Schenker,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a very confident guy too. Yeah. So I mean, he's not gonna flinch for anything.
Yeah. I had the best time. I had the best time roadieing. Yeah. The rig we built for him was so great. The rig we had, I'm so grateful. Obviously I played the Red Special, and I played the white and black VV. You know, I used to tune it
Yep.
every night and hand it to him. You know, and that rig was really simple. It was I have some funny Michael Schenker stories. I remember the first day we're at production rehearsals in Tampa, and he comes in. I had the rig in front of me; it's already wired up. And he comes in, I just hear behind me. He goes, "You must be Paul," in his German accent. I can't do it. I turn around; it's Michael Schenker. I'm like, "Wow, this is so cool." I'm like, "Wow, this is like, man, Michael Schenker." Like, wow, and at this point, I mean, I'm pretty versed, as a tech. I mean, it's kind of hard to make me feel starstruck, because
Right.
I've met a lot of people at this point. And it's Michael Schenker, and he had this tote bag full of wah-wah pedals, and he goes, "Okay, we're going through these." And that's the first thing he did. We're going to stage. I mean, he puts a bag down, and it's just, it's like 12 wah-wah pedals. Like, okay, so I run a cable out, and he goes through the wahs. We turn them upside down, and I open them up. We had the dial. He goes, "Now spin it." Now he'd play, and he's ripping, and he goes, "Stop." Whenever I hit a certain point, "Stop," he'd yell. I go, "Okay," and we'd lock, because he'd engage the wah
Right.
to that point, that really sweet tone area. And so that was the only thing in the signal path in front of the guitar, besides the wireless. So you had a wireless going into the wah pedal, and then to the amp. And the amp was just a Marshall solid state amp, and they sounded great. And then that broke into a TC 2290 delay, which then went into two Marshall super lead heads that we just used the power section of. So the Marshall solid state amp was the preamp to preamp out into the delay to knock it to stereo into two returns of the Marshall late 70s or early 80s amps for power.
Okay.
And that was the rig. Yeah. And he would come down early. Here's another guy who his work ethic, it was incredible. I'd imagine he's still doing this today, I'd imagine, right? He would come down early to sound check. Well, I'm sorry, sound check would be at 4:00, but he'd be there at 1. And he'd come in, I'd have his Pellegrino water ready for him, a large Pellegrino on the rack, and I'd have the V tuned a half step up. So it was tuned to F, restrung and tuned to F. And he would come in, hey, I give him the guitar. He had a Rockman on a belt. He had a thick belt around his waist, and he had a Rockman, and he had these portable little like speakers that he would hang around his neck right here that plug into the Rockman. And he would walk around the venue and walk around the parking lot, just walk around and play and play and play until sound check. At sound check, I would knock the guitar down to E, right? And then after sound check, I'd knock it back up to F, and he would take it to the dressing room, and he would play until showtime.
Wow.
Now, but I'm okay. I'm exaggerating. About 45 minutes before showtime, I'd go back and grab the guitar so it would settle in back and knock it back to E. But that's how Michael Schenker would warm up. He'd tune the guitar to F, and he'd play all day. And it was mind blowing to watch him play up close. He's beautiful. Just so much passion in every note. Even when he's just sitting in a chair, just warming up.
He is the ultimate focus. I think so.
Yeah.
I actually, the more I talk to more questions I get, I'm gonna have to put a pin in it, and we'll have to talk again at 24 because it's been a lot of fun because I just keep thinking about questions. But yeah, well, I'll reach out to you again and we'll talk some more. I'll share this with you also. I want to it's been great.
But also, I mean, and also I used to roadie for Kerry King with Slayer on Seasons in the Abyss tour.
See, I mean,
and what's that?
I see. I go out for days talking to you.
Yeah. So now I wanted to talk about this because now here you have. This is really cool, and I also I helped Dave Mustaine out too, you know, checking for him on some situations where he got in trouble where a tech had to leave.
Yeah.
You know, and okay, before I go there, but you know, working with Kerry King and working with Jeff Hanneman that close was mind blowing too, because you know it was the West Coast thing as opposed to say Scott Ian was very East Coast, as a New York vibe. Kerry and Jeff were very LA. It's a different thing, different sound, and their approach to thrash metal was very different. It was very even their sound was very spiked. Like there was a Kerry and Jeff like pushed like 800 hertz in front of their amp. I mean, crushed it. You know, so you had like a frown EQ in front of their amp, right? Where Scott Ian didn't have that. Scott had a TC line booster that would take away bass, which would kind of enhance the mid-range, but Scott never pushed mid-range. Then you had James Hetfield, who would scoop out the mid-range, right? And then you had Dimebag, who would go even further away. Like Dimebag would scoop out 1.8. This is a trade secret for all you guitar players out there who are getting in production. You go to your rig, scoop out 1.8 really hard, you get that really nasty thrash mid-range scoop, Pantera kind of vibe. You want to push 1K 800 in front of the amp, you get Kerry King, Jeff Hanneman, Gary Holt, another very, very, very important guitar player in thrash metal.
Yeah.
Who's just as important as Dave Mustaine, you know, and James Hetfield, Gary Holt, who would push mid-range in front of the amp too. You know, James Hetfield wouldn't do that. James would knock out, you know, 750, you know? A lot to talk about.
It was fun. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show.
I love him.
Awesome.
I love him.
I'll have you come back.
Yeah, thanks.
And we'll do this again. It's been super fun. I learned a lot today. Thanks, man.
Right on, Sean.